Oh, hi. Welcome back to Vibe with It. My name is Grace, and this is a space where I talk about too many things, some of which I hope you find cool, fun, interesting, and maybe even useful. Today, we're going to talk about mental health, specifically therapy. What is it? Who needs it? And where to find it? I am no stranger to therapy. And I am a big supporter of it too. I know a lot of you are interested in it, but just don't know where to start. Let me help you. Take it from someone who has personally navigated the waters herself. I also know some of you might be skeptical or just simply uninterested. I hope you stay and see if I can debunk some of the myths or stigmas that you might believe. I'll give you a hint. Therapy has a lot of facets and is not just used to fix you or your problems. So what do you think? Stick around and maybe I'll change your mind.
It's your host, Grace Chan.
Oh, hi, that's me. I'm just a normal girl with a lot of stories. After my first episode, I got great feedback from a bunch of you with what my next episodes should be about. One of the topics that popped up the most was mental health. I mean, I can't blame you. I did harp on it a lot in episode 1. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, don't be a stranger. Go back and give it a listen. In that episode, I mentioned how therapy helped me turn my life around. And it's true. But it did take a while, which is already our first debunked myth. One misconception I hear a lot about therapy is that it just doesn't work. Well, I gotta tell you, you have to give it some time. Do you have a skincare routine? I used to not have a skincare routine at all. I don't even have great skin either. I have an oily T-zone, dryness around my mouth and cheeks. My forehead is perpetually bumpy, and I get random and sporadic breakouts all the time. But I literally could not be bothered. My skin wasn't that bad, and I could live with it, right? Plus, I just didn't have time for it. I mean, I was always rushing out the door in the morning or just way too tired by bedtime. There was just no way I could stand in front of my bathroom mirror and slap lotions all over my face when I have better and more important things to do. Once, I even got into a heated debate with some of my friends about whether the skincare industry was a scam. I definitely thought it was a scam until I moved to a new environment and all of my skin issues were exacerbated. It was getting obvious that splashing water on my face wasn't really helping anymore. Yeah, I know how that sounds. Okay. I know it sounds like I completely derailed off of our main topic today, but I swear, this has something to do with it, okay? In fact, this is actually how I stumbled upon therapy myself, and how I think some people may view it too. Let me explain with a little bit of story time. So, I was a little neurotic in college. Okay, maybe I was a lot neurotic. I had a weird work-life balance where I was probably the textbook definition of work hard, play hard. I studied extensive hours and spent very little time in my college apartment that I paid rent for out of my own pocket. And it is crazy to reminisce on how often I would stay in the library until 4 a.m., come home to sleep by 5, then wake up at 8 to go to classes and repeat the cycle all over again. And on the weekend, I would study all day, just trying to pack in as many hours in the library as possible before going out later that night with my friends to get, well, belligerent. It sounds like a hectic lifestyle, and it was. But it wasn't that I wanted to live my life like this, honestly. I really just could not imagine life otherwise. See, if I wasn't studying, I could feel my heart racing, my hands would go numb, and my vision would blur. It was an awful feeling. So, with every spare moment I had, I chose to appease that awful feeling by studying. And if I wasn't studying, I chose to party with my friends so that I could numb that awful, dreaded feeling. But what was that feeling? I never really gave myself the chance to feel it, but one time I did. My boyfriend at the time, who is now my fiance actually, visited me where I was going to college. We were long distance in the beginning of our relationship. But even while he was there, I still studied as much as I normally would have. After a quick dinner together, I grabbed my backpack and said, "Hey, you ready? Let's head back to the library." He looked at me and said, "Do you want to take a break? You've been going at it for several days straight. And come on, let's spend some time together." He had a point, and I took a moment to consider it. Taking a break. Hmm. In that very moment I thought those words, I was overcome with worry and fear of losing time, which would lead to less time studying, which would lead to being less prepared for my upcoming midterm, which would lead to getting a bad grade on the midterm, which would mean that I would have to work even harder on the next midterm to not get a bad grade. And if I got a bad grade in the class, then my life would essentially be over. These thoughts had all fired instantaneously, and my brain felt like it was going to explode. My body started shaking, and the muscles in my hands locked into this really uncomfortable, crunched position. And then my vision blurred, with both tears and fear. I started gasping for air, and these really strange noises were coming out of me. It was like I was hyperventilating, but also screaming for my life. Literally, because I thought I was going to die right then and there. Ah, yes, my first full-fledged panic attack. Just like with skincare, I just kept brushing it off and went on with life. Oftentimes, we do this with a lot of things. We let things pile up because we feel like it's not that bad. Bad habits start to accumulate, but not quite to the point where we feel like things have become an issue. Like, yeah, it's not great, but it's not terrible either. But the more we pile things up, the more unstable we come. And when life throws us a curveball, when the odds are not in our favor, that very tall pile comes tumbling right down. Suddenly, things aren't great, and it's terrible too. For me, when my skin started to get worse when I moved to a new environment, I said, fine, I will finally start taking care of my skin. At that point, I wasn't ready to commit to a 10-step morning and night routine whatsoever, but I did want to look for something that could get my skin under control. Similarly, after my panic attack in college, I knew things were bad and something was very wrong. A friend recommended I set up an appointment with student counseling on campus, and with some courage, time, and willpower, I eventually found myself sitting on a couch facing a counselor. I was required to come in every 2 weeks to check in and was given homework. Ugh, I mean, I felt like I didn't have time for all of this. But my counselor pointed out that I did have time. I was just using that time to feed into my anxious antics, which only exacerbated my symptoms. And she was right. The work she had me do actually did help me. I'm using the word work, but really, it's actually just learning strategies that you can do on your own time on a daily basis. For example, if I ever felt panicky again, I learned to settle my mind and find 5 things I could see, 4 things I could touch, 3 things I could hear, 2 things I could smell, and 1 thing I could taste. A classic, beautiful grounding strategy. After I graduated college, I did not have access to my campus counselor anymore. So I continued without therapy for a few months, and then all my symptoms flooded back again. The panic attacks were frequent, and the anxiety was so overwhelming. My mind was always running at a million miles per hour. For all you skincare enthusiasts out there, does this sound a little familiar? Therapy, just like skincare, takes time and consistency to work. When I was first starting out on my skincare routine, I took a week off because I just simply wasn't up for it. And what do you know? All of my skin issues came back and I was dealing with the same problems all over again. And sometimes it can take different products for your skin to get under control. So between therapy and skincare, a lot of things are not a quick fix. Okay, is anyone else thinking about that one meme where the guy slaps on a piece of duct tape over a hole where water is just gushing out of a water tank? Yeah, we definitely don't want things to get that bad. Okay? But seriously, therapy is not a quick fix, and sometimes it does mean going through several sessions or even a few different therapists until you start to see progress. In my case, I really liked my first therapist out of college. But at the same time, when I look back on it, my sessions were really not that life changing at that time. If anything, it was my introduction to making consistent meetings, to talk therapy, and feeling comfortable enough with someone to fully express myself. Since I was so new to therapy, I spent a lot of our sessions just word vomiting. You know, words come tumbling out of your mouth and you're basically ranting. I was just ranting about how I felt and all of my frustrations. When I moved on to my first graduate program, I was yet again out of a therapist for a few months. Feeling all my symptoms coming back yet again, I went and found another therapist who I stuck with for the next 2 years. With each new therapist comes a new approach. In comparison, these new sessions were more introspective. We were digging deep to understand why I felt certain emotions. My new therapist asked a lot of questions that got me really thinking and learning more about myself. This is also where I learned about core values and a core self, which by now, if you haven't noticed, I have already mentioned a bunch of times in my last 2 episodes. When I moved to my second grad program, I knew I had to look for another therapist immediately. I wanted to keep up with my routine because I saw how much it was helping me. However, the new therapist I found was not a good fit at all. Our sessions did not feel productive, and I felt like I was constantly spinning in circles. Quickly, I started going downhill. We were so incompatible, and I was so stubborn to try to make it work that our sessions actually started undoing what was now 3 years of therapy work in just 9 months. Different therapists are just like different skin products. Sometimes they just don't work. Sometimes a product can cause you to break out. It can cause stinging sensations and for your skin to get really red and itchy. And in that case, you have to stop use immediately and find something else that can actually work for you. So, when I went and found my next and most recent therapist, it was like a light bulb went on in my life. If you remember from my first episode, this was around the time when I had to make drastic changes in my life. I was so broken when I started our sessions that instead of making me repeat my entire life story as I had done with my past 3 therapists, they immediately focused on helping me get me to a place mentally where I could be actually ready to work on myself. Just as my campus counselor did years ago, I was given work and different strategies to help me. And within a few months, we were undoing that damage caused in the previous year and was ready to start looking inward again. Now I was ready to work on myself and to repair the traumas that I'd been through. I stuck with this therapist for another 2 years and I finally felt like I was healing. This is just like finding that holy grail product. You know, that redness is going away and your skin is going back to that normal color. Your skin is back to an even texture and there are no more stinging or uncomfortable sensations. It's like you're able to get your skin to a good place, a place where you're able to maybe perhaps reduce the number of steps in your regimen and just maintain it. See, therapy doesn't fix you. It gives you the tools and guidance to get you to a place where you can just maintain your symptoms. For example, when I would get triggered into a high anxiety state, my body would tense and my mind would race until I became incoherent or confused, aka my frontal lobe was shutting down. Yikes. Therapy helped me recognize these exact symptoms that were true for me and then find targeted strategies that helped me relax. With that in mind, therapy is only as good as the work you put in. I had to practice. Everything I learned was not already instinctual, and I had to constantly remind myself to do my calming strategies. So now that I've harped and harped on why therapy may take a while but is still nonetheless good for you, how do you know if you actually need therapy? The short answer is that you can go to therapy anytime for any reason. It can be a temporary thing where you go for a few months just to find your footing, which is perfect for if you're in a new setting or in a new life trajectory and just need a third perspective or someone to talk to who can give you professional advice. You can also go to therapy to work on interpersonal skills so that you can be your best self. I mean, my fiance actually started going to therapy to work on his communication skills since he wanted to create deeper connections with people. And if you feel like you are feeling something on the inside and you just don't know what it is, but you definitely don't like it, then therapy will definitely help you iron out those wrinkles. Okay, so have any of you ever stepped into a very large beauty store and just became instantly overwhelmed? I definitely have, and I still do. Navigating therapy for the first time can definitely feel like that. Maybe you're thinking that you want to try therapy, but don't really know where to start. I have done a lot of work finding therapy over the years, so I will share what I learned in my process. Let's begin with insurance that covers behavioral health. The easiest way to find a provider that won't cost you an arm and leg is to find one that is in your network. Go to your insurance company's website, sign in to your account, and use their search engine to find providers that accept your insurance. Unfortunately, most companies will just list the provider's name, location, and contact, but it's good to note that most providers specialize in specific issues, so you might have to look up each provider to make sure that they are a fit to your needs. You can also do a brute search. This is actually how I found all of my therapists. You can Google therapists near me and use some popular sites like Psychology Today to search for providers in your area. You can even filter what you are looking for, from different issues like anxiety, depression, ADHD, and more, to even selecting the primary language, sex, and even the insurance that they accept. It still does require some finagling to make sure these providers do, in fact, take your insurance or are currently accepting new clients, but at least you can narrow your options to fit your exact needs. If you're not ready or really not sure if you even need to be seen by a therapist, you can always make an appointment with your primary care provider or PCP and tell them about how you're feeling. A lot of mental health problems will manifest into physical symptoms. So, if you're having trouble sleeping, are always fatigued, have muscle aches all the time, or have constant headaches, and etc., it is probably a good idea to go to your PCP anyway, not only to rule out other health conditions, but to get some pointers about whether or not you should consider therapy. Cool, cool, cool. So you've done your research, and there's a bunch of these acronyms attached to the provider names that are really confusing to understand. These are licensing credentials, and they all mean something different, but I'm going to summarize them into three different categories. The first, you will come across a licensed therapist. These credentials will start with the letter L, like LMFT or LCSW. When you see this, the provider has a master's degree in their respective field. They are typically trained in that specific field, and so they will have more specialization. This is usually in fields like marriage and family counseling or clinical social work. Other times, you'll stumble upon a PsyD or a PhD. These are psychologists, which is the correct term to refer to them, but are still called therapists in casual settings. Psychologists receive a doctorate degree in psychology, and they treat a wide array of issues, with their approach being more clinical and research-based. Between the two, therapists and psychologists are both able to treat clinical mental health issues. I have worked with both types of therapists and enjoyed them both. Sometimes you might cross paths with a psychiatrist. Psychiatrists have a medical degree, an MD, and have the ability to prescribe medication. Therapists and psychologists do not have that ability and can only recommend the potential of including medication into your treatment plan. In my experience, psychiatrists don't offer too many therapy services at the depth that a therapist or psychologist do. They will hold sessions, but most of it will be geared towards symptom and medication management, which is what my sessions look like with my psychiatrist right now. But of course, this can change based on the provider and the issues they treat. Okay, credentials understood. With whatever provider you choose, you're going to have to reach out to them in some way. This is an obstacle that may seem really big for some people, but trust me, it is way easier than you think. If you go through your PCP, they'll likely refer you to someone in the same group that's already in network. And all you have to do is reach out and make your first appointment. If you are doing a brute search, know that some providers will be private practice, where they are not attached to any overhead company or entity. In these cases, you will have to reach out to the provider themselves. Usually, they'll have their own website that has a contact me form, or you can send them a direct email or phone call from the information on their profile. If not a private practice, many providers will then be part of a bigger company or group. These groups will also have their own website, and typically you can look at the different profiles of each provider and decide who is best for you. Generally, these websites will also have their own contact form where you can give them a little bit of information on yourself and indicate a specific provider you want to see, or just leave it open for them to match you. After you submit that form, someone from the office will contact you to gather more information and help you schedule your first appointment. When I found my most recent and beloved therapist, I was matched to them through this first phone call, as I hadn't actually listed anyone specific in my contact form. And if it isn't obvious already, they did a really good job at matching us. But even if your first therapist or first match doesn't work, you can always change therapists. I know it feels awkward, but many providers understand that there needs to be a good fit that's mutual between provider and patient for therapy to actually be helpful. Remember to vouch for yourself and what you need. Another myth I heard about therapy is that it is just way too expensive. And yeah, it is true to some extent. If you don't have insurance, yes, it is very expensive, and unfortunately, the myth is true in this case. Full price therapy sessions can go upwards of $150 to $200. However, some providers offer sliding scales for patients depending on their financial situation. This can bring costs down to a more reasonable price. You can easily search for these providers that offer this service by using that phrase, sliding scale. If you do have insurance, then therapy can actually be very affordable. Of course, it will be dependent on your insurance benefits, so make sure you look into that first. In some cases, you may have to meet a deductible first and pay full session price out of pocket before your insurance kicks in. If you are going through private practice, most will have different insurance and billing systems. For example, I had to pay full price for my sessions upfront, but was given a super bill at the end of a few months so that I could make a claim to my insurance company. This did mean I had to make my own claims and get reimbursed later. Other times, you may just have to pay a copay, which is almost always less than the full session price. In my case, my current insurance has a $0 copay for behavioral health without even having to reach a deductible. Super freaking score! So obviously, there are a lot of different ways to pay or cover treatment, so make sure you discuss these things with your insurance and or provider to make sure you are financially covered in some way. Okay, so finances are squared away and you found a provider and you made your first appointment. What can you expect from the first meeting and the next few sessions? Due to the pandemic, many providers offer teletherapy, which is basically like going on Zoom to meet your therapist. I really like this option since you can do your sessions in the comfort of your own home or in your car if you have to squeeze therapy in between classes or on your lunch break, which is what I had to do a lot of the time. It also lets you see providers across your state, not just in your direct vicinity, as long as your insurance allows it, that is. In-person sessions are now coming back with full force. And while I love the online option, there are things I really do love about in-person sessions. For one, your therapist can pick up on your body language better if you are in person with them. And for two, if you are someone who gets a little self-conscious on camera, then this is the perfect option. In both cases, the first session is going to be the least helpful. Yeah. So don't be discouraged if you come out feeling like nothing really happened. Your therapist will ask you questions about yourself and what you're looking for. This will help them create a treatment plan for you and have an idea of how to approach the next few sessions. The next few sessions will still be less helpful than you hope. But in this time, you are building your relationship with your therapist so that they can get to know you and pick up on your antics. And for you, this is when you get a feel for your therapist's approach to therapy and see if that works for you. Okay, so let's say you've been in therapy for a while now and your therapist is recommending that you add medication to your treatment plan. Or maybe you went to your PCP first and they outright prescribed you medication. What does that mean and what does taking medication feel like? I think there is a stigma around mental health medications, and I really want to bust that stigma right here, right now. Not everyone will need medication, and like I said before, therapy is for everyone, wherever your mental space is. But for some people with severe or persisting symptoms, they really need these medications to feel like a normal human being. Without these medications, they are never able to get to a stable baseline. In my personal case, I've been on medication for the past 4 years, and the moment the meds started working, I finally knew what it was like to live life just one step closer to a normal person. Yes, just one step closer. My medications did not just fix me and transform me into a new person. Instead, it helped me get out of a really bad place so that instead of spending all of my energy and focus on trying to survive, my symptoms were controlled enough that I could actually get out of bed and take a shower and eat some food. And most importantly, it really helped me get to that baseline space to allow me to focus on therapy and the work I was doing on myself so that someday I can do it without the help of medication. And FYI, it is not recommended to take medication without also involving therapy. Like I said, medications help you get to a baseline so that therapy can actually help you. I was lucky enough where my medications worked out for me. But in some cases, they might not sit well with you at all, and the side effects might feel awful. What did I say earlier? Oh, yeah, vouch for yourself. If you're not feeling great on your medications, tell your PCP or psychiatrist that you aren't liking them and ask for alternatives. There are so many different medications out there, and your PCP or psychiatrists are there to help you manage your regimen. So now what? You've been in therapy for a while now and you're doing some really good work. What else can you expect and when will it end? Throughout therapy, not only will you find ways to manage your symptoms, but you might even find clarity and better understanding of yourself, others, and the world. And someday, you'll summit your problems. You'll have all the tools you need to live life safely and happily. And you'll be up atop that mountain, feeling the weight of the world fall off of your shoulders. For me, I was put into remission for all of my diagnoses this past June. This means that I'm not in therapy anymore. It was really scary to say goodbye to my therapist knowing how much our sessions helped me. But like with all things in life, we eventually become independent enough and fully equipped to move on. In retrospect, I am really proud to have acknowledged that I needed help. As much as I always wanted to look independent and strong all on my own, I did myself more good than harm by asking for help. And this is the last stigma I really want to shut down. Seeking therapy doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you can't get through problems in life on your own. Asking for help is the strongest thing you can do because you're not letting your ego win. At the end of the day, you are getting through your problems all on your own because you're taking the initiative to fix things when they aren't right, to address the problem before it gets worse, to take care of yourself and be kinder to yourself. Let's be kind to ourselves. So, yes, I think therapy is great. Change my mind. If you are considering therapy, then I hope I was able to give you the preliminary tools to help you take that leap. If you were never considering therapy but now are, then yay, I'm really glad for you. And if you are still skeptical and unsure about therapy, then you do you, boo. I am just happy that you listened and stayed this far. So if you're on YouTube, leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about mental health. And let me know if you'd like me to talk about other topics under the realm of mental health. If you're on Spotify, leave me a comment in the questionnaire and don't forget to answer my poll. You can find them by clicking through on this episode link. And of course, whichever platform you're on, please like and subscribe and share with all your friends so that this channel can reach as many people as possible. As always, let me know what you'd like to hear next. It can be anything. Try me. I've got a head full of thoughts. Stay bright and beautiful, friends, and be kind to yourself. Cheers!